You were created to make a sound, not just to echo the noise. Welcome to the Amplified Era podcast. I am your host, Nadia Morris. I am here to help you push past the fear, identify the silence, and birth the purpose you've been carrying. We are leaving the safety of the shadows and stepping into the spotlight of your destiny. This is season 1, The Great Unmuzzling. So if you are ready to take the mute button of your life, let's get to work. Welcome to another episode of the Amplified Era podcast. I am your host, Nadia Morris, also known as Nadia the Purpose Midwife, and we are now into phase 2, which is the strategy that you will require to have to now amplify and to have a season where walk into a season where you are fully vocal. So last phase we would have dealt with the muzzle, the fear, burying the nice girl, but this now we are going into how do we deal with the actual work that we need to do. And the last phase was entitled the awakening, and sometimes waking up is just not enough, because you can still be awake and still be broke. You can be awake and still be stuck. So this is the strategy phase, and so basically you are done with talking about how you feel. So now it's about how you will find what you need to do, find what you need to do, and build it. So I want you to grab your notebooks because class is in session, and I want to make it clear that today episode 5 deals with project managing your purpose. Project managing your purpose. And why am I qualified to talk about project management? I am a project management professional, PMP, and I also would have been ProSci certified. So you deal with change management, understanding, applying the model, the ADKAR model, to change in your life. It can also be applied personally. But today we're going to be talking about project managing your purpose. And I want to talk about how, after we've given our jobs the 40 hours for the week, what is left? You give them 40 hours of strategy, 40 hours of KPIs, 40 hours of structure. What is left? What is left are leftovers, and that is what we often give towards the purpose and the calling on our lives. We give all the energy, so there's nothing left. It's just a random burst of energy with no timeline. So you're basically like an VP on your job, but no, you're basically like operating like an amateur in your own life. And you can manage budgets, you can manage people, you can manage strategy. But the question for you today is, how are you really managing the vision that God has given you? And I want to think about it. If you treated your corporate job the same way that you're treating your purpose and your calling, you would have been fired 6 months ago. Let us just leave it there. So the aim of this session is to bring you into a space where you stop treating your purpose like it's a hobby. It's not a hobby. It is not a hobby, right? And the thing what I want to point out to you is, when you get the God-given strategy, when you see God, and when God has shown you the vision of what you're supposed to be doing, what you're called to do, and what do you do next? That is always the question. We hear what God is saying, but then to activate and to do, we have an issue. We have an issue when it's time to activate and to actually do the work. And I want to also break down again, I think I've done it previously before, between purpose, calling, and assignment. Purpose is that overarching thing that you were created to do. Purpose is why you were created, and all of us, our purpose in life is to serve and to honor God. And so sometimes the purpose flows from that. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, when you stand before Him, would He say that, okay, Nadia, you did fulfill your purpose, this overarching thing that you have been called to do? And purpose is not, it's not an event. And I think many persons are confused about when we speak about purpose, that we think it's somewhere you arrive at. Purpose is oftentimes progressive, and you won't see it. It's like it builds to a bigger picture. And so what it will look like in life is that you have this overall purpose that God has called you to do. Mine is to help others birth their purpose. That is my purpose in life. How do I go about that? And then the Lord will give you a specific calling, whether it's within the offices or the fivefold. He'll give you a calling. The calling is different from the assignment, right? So the calling, yes, you're called to this office, but then in each season of life you're going to have an assignment that is connected to your purpose. And so you have to understand now what those things are, and that is how now we start to talk about how to project manage your purpose. Because when you receive the assignment, what do you do next? So that is what I'm going to help you walk through today. And I'm not going to get into too much of the detailed project life cycle. I'm going to try to keep it very high level, very simple for you. One, two, three things that you need to have if you want to start applying that project management scope to your purpose. And the first thing, and we taught this last week in the Blue Mentorship, when we talk about vision, seeing what God sees. And your vision is really what the spiritual sight that God is going to give you into who you are and what you should be doing. It is spiritual vision that we're talking about here. And with that comes parameters. So purpose simply means that there's a vision connected to you, and there are going to be parameters, because you cannot just be out doing anything. Anything that you do must be linked back to doing something, linked to your purpose, be purposeful. And so there are going to be parameters. So the first step in the project management analogy is that you must define the scope of what it is that you are doing. There is a scope, there is a parameter, and in project management we always complain about scope creep, where you start the project, you define it, and we understand that we're supposed to do this, and then over time other things are added that are not linked to the initial vision of what we were supposed to do. And so you will receive, as I said, this through spiritual vision, the parameters of what you're supposed to do. So for example, I already indicated my purpose is to help others deliver their own purpose. How is it gonna look? I offer services through coaching, mentorship, and I also host events. And so each year it's not gonna look like the other year. So every year there is an assignment, there's a theme, and within that parameters is what God is saying, okay, now you need to implement. And so your purpose cannot be that you want to save the world. It has to be something specific. So the thing is, if you try to do everything, you really end up doing nothing. So a lot of us fall in that trap with, we're good at doing many things, but for that season, what exactly is God asking you to do? So for me, in this season, He asked me to launch a mentorship program. He said start a podcast. There's another book lingering somewhere. So what I'll have to do now is be specific about what these things are and set them up. And then the next step that you're gonna do is to have specific timelines, right? You must have specific timelines. timelines. When in if you're on the job, typically if you are planning a project, you're gonna have the milestones and when these things are due. So it could be that, okay, you're supposed to complete the business plan or the corporate plan by September 30, which is quarter two, right? But if you are trying to link it back to purpose, I find that many persons, if you're good at doing it on the job, you have a timeline, you are specific about the things that are to be done. But when it comes to your purpose and the assignments, all you're gonna have is someday, and someday is not a day of the week, may I add. So if there's no date on the calendar for the thing that you're being, the assignment that you are seeking to do, it is an hallucination. It is not a goal. So your goals need to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and time bound, or relative, yeah, time bound. So you must have a specific timeline. Did you ask God for the timeline? Is something I always say. God gave you the vision, but what was the timeline? Did you ask Him for the timeline? So that is something that you would now have to dig deeper into. Step 3. So I'm giving you very simple. Define the scope, you set the timeline, and then now you'd have to have some reallocation of resources because you have the resources, but they are otherwise occupied, right? And what resources are we talking about? We're talking about financial resources, because to fund the assignments, they're going to require monies. Is it going to be from your pocket? Is it going to be from sponsorships? You must find and document your resources. You need to document where your resources are coming from. Do you have a budget? You also have to document the time allocation that you're giving towards this assignment. And many of us always say we don't have the time, but yet we are doom scrolling on TikTok. We are just on the For You page on Instagram. Is it For You page or the Explore page, whatever you want to call it? You're there scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. But if you should audit your time the same way that you audit your money, you will see where the time is being wasted. Time management in this season is going to be very important if you have assignments to implement. The other type of resources you'd have to consider is human resources. Whether it be yourself, do you need a team? Do you need assistance to implement what it is that you're trying to implement under your assignment? So you have to know, tap into that to know, and it will also tie back to whether or not the timeline that you've set for this particular activity will make sense. Because if the resource is not available, it means that your timelines will be extended. All right. And so I want a strategy. I want you to employ a strategy. And it is for me in leadership management, you must have time where you sit down and you reflect on what is working and what is not working. Because if you just continue to do and don't review, you're going to have an issue. So as a good project manager, you need to have reviews of what you are doing. And I would recommend to have a Monday morning CEO meeting. And we're talking about being the CEO of your life, because you're not leaving it up to chance. You're not leaving it up to anybody else to do what needs to be done. You are taking charge. So what you're going to do right now as you're watching is you're going to take out your phone and you're going to go to your calendar. You're going to schedule a recurring meeting with yourself every Monday for at least 20 minutes. And what are you going to talk about in this meeting with yourself and the Lord? You're going to examine what you got done the previous week, and what is this one thing that you must do this week. And then you're gonna sit and analyze, where are the blockages, where am I missing the mark. You have to note those things, because sometimes if we don't note them, we don't know where we are. And really, I want you to think about taking charge. Yes, the Lord has given you the vision, and you're waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do. You're waiting on some other manager somewhere to come and say, okay, Nadia, you need to do A, B, and C. But in effect, you are the manager now in charge of your life, because you cannot leave it up to chance. You cannot leave it up to anyone else to fulfill your assignment for you. So think about it. If you don't show up for this Monday morning CEO meeting, it simply means that the company, your life, will shut down. That is where it is at. It simply means that your life, you're not showing up for yourself. So basically, your life is going to shut down. And you should question yourself and ask whether that is what you want to happen. And so, I wasn't going to be very long today, because I need you to do some work, right? So I want you to pick one thing that God has been weighing on you to get done. That one thing. Is it you're supposed to establish a program, a mentorship, a small group, write a book, start a podcast, write a devotional, send encouragement every morning. Pick that one thing that you know that God has been speaking to you about, and you have been ignoring it. This is the year to implement all of what you've been ignoring, and this is the perfect opportunity for you to now get your pen and paper. You can probably do it in your next Monday morning CEO meeting if you so desire, and you're going to now define the scope of what needs to be done. All right, and then you need to set the deadline for that activity. If it's too much, it's just one thing that you're picking to focus on, and you're going to say, okay, this is the scope, this is the deadline, it must have a start and end date. And then you're going to schedule that CEO meeting that will help you to move a little bit forward. And I want to insert here, if it's a case where you need additional support in terms of walking through where you are, because sometimes we feel stuck, and so we don't know, we're trying to decipher what God is really saying to us. So sometimes you feel very stuck in the season that you're in, that you start to believe that God has not said anything to you about what needs to be done. And so if that is you, you can also schedule a free discovery call to walk through where you are now and how I can assist you. I will leave in the notes a link for you to set up a free discovery call if you so desire. And I also want to invite you to the upcoming Clarity Masterclass that will be held on April the 18th. It is going to be face to face in Kingston, Jamaica, and we are diving into understanding, diagnosing the seasons that you're in, and developing a 90-day plan to walk you through wherever you need to be. And it is a year we are talking about pivoting, we're talking about blooming with confidence. So you sometimes you can't pivot, you can't bloom because there's no clarity. And so I want to also speak again that clarity is very expensive, but also being unsure of yourself is even more expensive, because when you're unsure, there is no movement. You are sitting, going around in a circle, and sometimes all God is saying, yes, I know that you may be successful, but there's something you can't shake, like there's something that is missing. And if that is you, the Karate Masterclass is where you need to be. And we also open the application period for the next Bloom Mentorship program, which starts in May. So I want to encourage you to stay tuned because there is more coming in phase two for the strategy. Where next episode we will talk about strategic silence. Because sometimes you are telling the wrong people about that vision, that purpose, that dream, that assignment, and they kill it before you even start. And so that is what we're going to talk about in the next episode, how to exercise strategic silence so that you can birth what needs to be birthed. And not everything needs to be discussed. Not everything that God has laid on your heart means that you need to share it with everybody. Sometimes you have to wait and allow for the thing to be seen before you discuss it with other people. So, I am your purpose midwife. I am signing out for this episode and hope that you will join me on the next one. Oh, before I go, there was a question because I did put on my Instagram if you want to ask me a question. You could have, and somebody asked me what purpose meant to me. And as I always have been saying, purpose is about being obedient to God and doing what He requires of you. It's basically you taking the initiative to know that God has spoken and to be obedient. So I'll leave it there for this week and see you next week. Thank you for stepping into the Amplified Ear with me today. If this episode sparked a fire in you, don't let it burn out. The best way to support this movement is to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a woman who is ready to find her voice. You can connect with me on social media at Nadia, the Purpose Midwife, to keep the conversation going. And remember, the muzzle is off, the silence is broken, and you have permission to take up space. Until next time, keep blooming.